Maybe how they talk about like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and who's the GOAT. He may be in the conversation for the local lender GOAT. Hello and welcome everyone to our podcast today. We are sitting here with Tim Cooper of New Res Home Loans. Welcome. Glad to have you here. I have a little bio on Tim. He's been a long-term lender here in Chico, 15th year in the business, lending.
As a manager, 24 as a producer, yeah.
Okay, all right. So 24, overseeing over $2 billion in loans here locally,
Production, yeah.
which is kind of towards the top, right? There's not very many up there on the $2 billion level. So he may be one of the, he may be the, maybe how they talk about like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and who's the GOAT. He may be in the conversation for the local lender GOAT. But fun fact about Tim, he played for the New York Yankees as a professional baseball player in a previous life, basically. And so that's awesome. But we're glad to have you here. Mm-hmm. And we're here to talk about loans, rates. Super important. Let's just start off like basically where are rates at this time? Give us just a brief overview of like where rates are at, where are you seeing them at, and how is it affecting basically like the home buying market?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate that intro. Oh, yeah. And then obviously you don't get to that level of accomplishment without a team, so thanks to the people who I've worked with in the past and currently, so hats off to them. So
yeah.
But yeah, rates currently I'd say right around 6.75 to 7% range on a 30-year fixed loan.
Yeah.
FHA you're looking in the lower sixes, maybe 6.1 to 6.25. And so we're trending in the right direction. That's off of 7.5 from 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah. Okay. So we're trending down, just kind of like a slow, gentle decline down here. And here's the thing: everyone's kind of got used to these like 3.5%, 3, 4 rates, and so. But it seems like people have gotten used to just basically, okay, the rate's 6.5, it's 7%. I'm going for it anyway. Is that what you've seen? Like it was maybe a slowdown when it was going up pretty quick, but now people are just getting used to it?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, that's the new normal, right? We're roughly about 3 years of, north of 6% interest rates, right? So it's just kind of now when you come into the market, you're hearing 6 and 7, and at occasion there's been 8s, right? And so I think it's now find the right price tag. And the good news is that we do anticipate rates to come down. You'll be able to refinance at some point down the road.
Yeah, and that's kind of the conventional wisdom, right? If like you're strategizing about when to buy a house, you want to buy before the rate cut. Is that right? Is there a what do you feel like the strategy is? Like, say you're a first time home buyer, you're looking at you're renting a house, you can get in the market at any time. Do you jump now and it's the rate's higher? I mean, what's your advice in that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's all comes down to your personal situation, but I do think we would all agree that when prices do come down, there'll be more competition, right? There'll be more people fighting or vying for that particular home, and when that happens, that drives prices up. So, I think now the strategy, even though rates are a little bit higher, you can get a good, really sticker price on a home. You have the ability to refinance when rates do drop.
Right.
I think if you say, let's wait till they drop, then you're going to be competing with many more people. Mm-hmm. And although you may have a lower rate, you might end up paying higher for the house. I think that in our market, because of the shortage of supply, that's going to be more of a reality.
Just your prediction, where do you see rates going for the timestamp? This is August 2024 right now. We're sitting down August 1st. So coming into the end of the year, say, November, December, October, kind of last Q4. What do you see rates doing? What's your? I always like, we have a relationship. I like to grill you. What do you think things are doing? If you can go on the record, we got on camera. Yeah. What do you think? What's your prediction for where rates are going to go here in the next quarter or so?
Well, I think as many people have heard, the Feds are considering lowering rates a quarter-ish on the September 18th meeting. Mm-hmm. We're already seeing a lot of that being baked in, right? So about 2 weeks ago, rates were in the 7% range, and the Feds have kind of indicated that September 18th they're going to drop. So we're beginning to see the rates. Now we're talking 6.75. So we're seeing a lot of that pricing baked in. So I anticipate a quarter cut in September 18th. There's another meeting, which is controversial because it's November 5th, right? I mean, November 6th and 7th, right? The day after the election.
Oh, wow.
People are saying there's political influence, et cetera. But there's 3 job reports until November. So I think a quarter in September, and then potentially another quarter in November. That would probably bring rates down to about 6.5 by the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. I've been hearing like Fed's going to cut rates.
Right.
Fed's going to cut rate. Buy now, refinance. Buy now, refinance. But it seems like it just hasn't quite gotten that drop off. You know, where it's like cut down. You know, half a point or more, or whatever. I mean, I guess it has a little bit. So why do you feel like it's going to be different this time around? Like, are you more like sure, like, hey, like I'm really much more confident now than I was maybe like a year ago or 18 months ago that like this is like for sure we're coming into cuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the numbers of inflation, the Feds are really liking where that's gone. You know, the indexes they look for inflation are really in a good little trend for them. And then there's also a thing called a dot plot map. So this is essentially there's 19 Fed members who vote on, you know, rate policy, et cetera. And there's a prediction. So they have actually their prediction of what rates will do in 2025 and 2026.
Oh, wow.
So they're kind of have like given us, you know, the crystal ball, if you will.
Okay.
And in the majority of them are anticipating a quarter cut by the end of 2024, a 1% cut over the course of 2025, and another 1% cut over the course of 2026. So we're almost looking at a 2.25 improvement over the next, you know, 2.5 years.
Okay.
And these are kind of on record Fed chair members stating that this is where they predict rates to be, you know, in the future.
Okay.
So they know way more than I do, but they've kind of made the prediction for us, so to speak, as to where they think the market will be.
Yeah. Now, in times past, has that prediction been like, say, we go back a year, 18 months, 2 years back in time when, you know, we were hearing a lot like marry the house, date the rate, refinance.
Yeah.
Do you feel like they were accurate back then, like a year or two ago?
Well, I think the challenge, obviously, COVID was a big curveball, right?
Right.
You know, and so you end up with supply chain issues. You know, you're just dealing with an asterisk or anomaly that, you know, no one really can predict.
Right.
But as we know, inflation kind of got out of control. I mean, the price of cars, the houses,
everything
skyrocketed,
Yeah.
right? And so it just took time in order to get that back in bay. So we're beginning to see, you know, inflation that got up to like 6-7%, where, you know, a toothbrush every year is increasing 7%. That's obviously not sustainable. So the Feds, in terms of keeping rates high, have like really begun to, how do we tamper that down?
Right.
And we've seen the interest, well, their key goal is to be around 2%, but we've seen 2.6-ish, you know, in terms of the inflation. Not exactly where they want to be, but way better than 6, right?
Yeah.
That we've seen in the previous 2 years.
Right.
So it's moving in the right direction. Now there's wage deflation. There's you know, wage issues, there's lower employment. So they're feeling like, hey, we're moving in the right direction. It may be time for a cut.
Okay. Yeah, that's sad too, because moving in the right direction means basically that people are getting hurt financially. The credit card bills are up, savings are down, unemployment's up. These are all like difficult things, and I think those are going to affect the home buyers.
Yeah.
You know, because you got to have money to buy a house, kind of a lot.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, and if you lose your job, if people aren't traveling or eating out as much, or the economic factors, you have to lower those rates.
Correct. Yeah. But you make a great point, because again, many people are like, hey, I remember 2, I remember 3, but what was it in exchange for? You know, many people lost their lives because of COVID, right? Many people lost their jobs or had to work at home, or just totally like disrupted their lives, right? And so it's like, if we get back to a 2 or 3% market, like what is it going to be in exchange for? Right? Is it some other world war? Like, I mean, you know, so we have to be mindful of, like, you know, be careful what we ask for. If we want to see 2 and 3, there's going to be probably some national catastrophe that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and no one wants to see that.
Yeah.
What do you feel is a healthy rate?
I think healthy rates from 4 to 6 are really healthy.
4 to 6.
100%. Yeah, I think that's a healthy market. You know, even 5 to 6. I mean, because you're looking at, I mean, a mortgage-backed security is something that you can invest in, and it creates a return to your portfolio.
Yeah.
So if you go to a financial planner, he's going to say, hey, I'm going to give you a 7% return over a 10-year period, et cetera. And so mortgage-backed securities, 10-year treasuries, these are all like bonds, flight to safety. This is your safe play money, right? So if you're getting 5% on a mortgage-backed security as part of your portfolio, you're happy with that.
Yeah.
You know, without the risk of the market ups and downs.
Yeah.
So I think that's really these are like bonds, treasuries, or safe play in your portfolio. And if you're getting 4, 5, and then you're hitting some home runs with, you know, Google stock or something of that nature, then it's a well-balanced portfolio.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, cool. So one of the things I have a heart for, obviously being a real estate agent, is the first time home buyer. I feel like there's all these millennials, these 30-year-olds, 32, 33. They're getting married, they're having kids, but they are living in apartments. They they got the dog, they don't have the backyard or the garage, they got the tricycle, where do they put it? They really want to buy a single family home. But the rates, and if you're talking to first time home buyers, that segment of the market, which I feel like has the most demand to buy a home.
Yeah.
What advice are you giving them right now as far as the lending side and the rates and when to buy and that kind of thing?
I mean, it just really comes down to personal budget, right? I think that one of the things that home ownership does show is, you're going to marry your house or make sure your mortgage payment is paid first. So from a
That's right.
psychological standpoint, as a lender, we're looking at, hey, mortgage payment, your shelter is going to be the first priority.
Yeah.
Right. And so many people have prioritize their house as a larger portion of their outgoing income, right, or outgoing expenses. So many people are paying 40% of their income towards their housing or shelter, or 45 to 50% of their household income towards shelter. And so that means you got to cut out maybe, that $800 car payment. So it's just really budgeting. You know, unfortunately, the prices are higher. Rates don't help a ton. But you have to really begin to look at your budget and how do you budget and slice the pie of, how many Starbucks are we going to have? How many times we're going to go to Fifth Street Steakhouse?
That's right.
So it just comes down just to the economics of your household.
Yeah.
If you want to be a homeowner, it may be a little bit more costly right now. But like every homeowner at some point has to say, hey, we just paid off our car. Maybe it's time to buy.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, the landlord's raising our rent. Maybe it's time to buy. Right. We just put our kid out of child care and now he's going to school.
Yeah.
That expense's gone. Now we can allocate that towards shelter and be a homeowner. So I think that barrier of entry is always there. Yeah. It's just how do you slice the pie?
Right. And I think innately there's something in certain people, not in everybody.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't me. When I was hitting 32, it was like, I need to buy a house. I don't know what it was. Like, I don't know what it is. I got to buy a house. It's like this American dream. It's this strange thing. And it's just, you got to prioritize it. I mean, I remember I made like $9 an hour back then. And my wife made 14. And we're like, how is this even possible?
Yeah.
One of the things I tell first-time home buyers is just you got to believe it's possible. I love, we saved for 2 years having roommates, all this other stuff, but it was like just something in us that we're going to sacrifice all the stuff. I just tell my wife, you want new shoes or you want a house?
Yeah, 100%,
you want all this stuff or you want a house?
Yeah.
But we can't have both.
Correct.
And sometimes it's a long road, but I mean, I think that people who own homes, generally are much better off financially in the long run.
Correct.
Net worth wise.
Yeah.
And but it's painful. It's painful to get in, and it sucks the first 3 years. But
correct.
Generally, you're better off.
Correct.
Even biting that bullet.
Yeah, well, anything worth having is worth sacrificing, right? And so,
That's it.
I think that, and it unfortunately, homeownership is not going to be for everyone.
Yeah.
And just depending on your situation, like you just really have to look at the numbers of does it work for me. But over time, as you're making that payment, you're essentially creating a savings account or building equity in that property that at some point is going to pay dividends for you and your family.
That's right. That's right. Cool. Okay. Last thing, I want to talk about another segment of the market. That's move-up buyers. Now, there's a whole bunch of move-up buyers, but there's a big problem because people got into these houses in COVID, right? 2020. And it's like, there's 10 offers on this house. It's going 30,000 over. You need to let me know by 2 p.m. today. This is the biggest purchase of your life. Let me know. And, a lot of people bought these houses very quickly. They were getting bid out on 10 houses in a row. They're exhausted. They just bought this house, and it's not exactly quite right. But they have a 3% interest rate. And the math on selling that property and getting a bigger, more expensive property is difficult, right? So what advice do you give to people? They're in the house right now. They've outgrown it. They bought a house. It was a bungalow. There's no garage. They got 2 kids. They got the basketballs in the rain and all this stuff. What advice do you give them, like, basically? If they want to move up, what are you saying to them?
Well, it's twofold, right? It's patience, and then obviously the good news, as rates do come down, you have some of these kind of locked-in buyers or people who have the 2 and 3s who won't move or won't put their house on the market, right? And so as we see rates get into maybe the 5s, then that might be a fair exchange. Hey, they're like, hey, I have a 2 or 3% interest rate, but I'm getting a pretty good penny for my house, and maybe it's worth making a move now. I can sell for X, move into my dream home, move up buyer, and more importantly, the 5.5% rate doesn't feel as bad, right?
Yeah.
Or I can put more money
Yeah.
down and get my payment where it really wants to be.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really the biggest element. We'll see those people come out of the woodworks once we see rates maybe get into the fives.
Okay.
And that may be a year or so away. Now
Right.
that guy who's willing to sell is not going to keep it as a rental.
Yeah.
And then the move up buyer, the other piece is, again, what's out there that fits your needs. There's just a shortage of inventory, and until we really see more properties or more selections, we're going to see a little bit of a gridlock.
Yeah. And I think that's, like you just said, until we see more inventory, there's going to be gridlock.
Yeah.
And to me, a big piece of that is building brand new homes.
Yeah.
Man, because people aren't moving out of their houses.
Correct.
And we, as a city, I'm just going to rant for a second, are terrible at building new houses. We have these developers, they make these plans.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not right here, it's not right there. And so now we have gridlock. Do you see any relief coming? Because I think a big piece of the solution to all of this, demand, there's 10 buyers, there's one house, is to build more houses.
Correct.
But then you hit this whole political thing where things get shot down.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, is there any answer to that? I mean,
Yeah, all twofold, right? So in terms of the move up buyer, like, you're right, they may have been knee jerk reaction in COVID and et cetera. And so you don't want to double down on a bad decision, right? So although, the market is tense, there's still not a lot of inventory for you to choose from. So don't double.
Yeah, don't get another bad house.
Yeah, at a higher rate, right? So I think it's just, go through that. But in terms of, when you talk about supply and demand, supply only comes from new construction, right? You sell a house, you buy a house, it's net neutral.
Well, what about baby boomers retiring, dying? There's all that.
Very small segment of the market, right? In terms of rental properties and, people dying, et cetera, that's probably going to make up less than 10% of the purchases, right? And so new inventory has to come from new construction.
Yeah.
It's not like someone has 70 rentals and all of a sudden they're going to flood the market and all start inventory. We need about 4 to 5 months to have a healthy marketplace, as you know. And we're probably about 2 months of inventory, right? So until we get to those numbers and buyers have a pretty healthy selection, but again, that's going to have to come from new construction. Buying a house and selling a house, we're still at 145 houses. Oh, I bought one, I'm closing one. It's net neutral. We're still at 145.
Yes.
So the city has to begin to understand that the only way to really grow the inventory and create more balance and price, stability is to allow new builders to come in, incent them to go vertical as fast as they possibly can, not cutting any corners, but we need new construction in order to fill the gap.
Yes, and you said the city needs to understand. I think the leaders in the city understand it. Well, most of them. The city planning department understands it. Lenders, agents, people in the real estate industry understand it. I think the people who don't understand it are actually the voters who get swindled, or maybe even, I think the problem is the people who already have a house, like me and you. We already got a house,
It doesn't bother
we
them.
don't care. Yeah. Oh, there's no inventory. Oh, the prices are going up. That means my equity's going up. I think it's partly that population who they got the house right next to Bidwell Park. What do they care? Let's stop all new building.
Correct. Yeah.
I bulldozed my lot. I built my house.
Correct.
But you can't do it over there. I think it's actually that's the population that needs to look outside themselves.
100%. I think if you want your kids and your grandkids to live in this town, there needs to be change.
Where are they going to live?
Yeah, they're not going to be able to afford, because Chico doesn't have the economic engine to have first-time home buyers buying $600,000 homes. That's just the reality. The math doesn't pencil, right? So if you graduate college and you go to teach, and your husband's, working at, Safeway, and you guys are bringing in, 150 grand, like, there's only so much of a house that's going to get you, right? And that's kind of the common Chico in, right? Or, whether it Butte County in, or whatever you want to call it. But it's not like we have, Google and Intel, all these companies, people are making $600,000-$700,000. So those economics have to come into play at some point in terms of the entry level house needs to kind of align with the median household income. Those are way out of whack right now. So I think that if the city began to really look at household incomes, and then how do we get the entry level home lease in that wheelhouse, it has to get to that at some point. And we're dealing with like steroid era kind of asterisk right now, because COVID, things jump, money was cheap, and there's a lot of people who got in who traditionally wouldn't have. But once we get back to the fundamentals, every real estate kind of region or economy needs to have the economy of scale of going, this is what people make,
Make,
this is what the houses need to kind of align for. And we're a little bit out of whack on that.
We're out of whack. The median income doesn't correlate with how much it costs to buy a house. The principles of economics, if the government doesn't get involved, we don't regulate our way out of this, it's going to come into alignment.
Correct.
It will if you just don't mess with it.
Correct. Yeah. And it takes time and there's some pain behind it. But, that is the path we have to begin to seek. Yeah.
And part of messing with it is stopping people who are taking risks to build the houses, to spend, invest millions of dollars in our city, to stop them. That's partly what's to blame for this out of whack, don't you think?
Yeah, I think, just COVID just was a big curveball. I mean, really, the biggest issue is that the Paradise Fire, right? Before that, we were actually we had probably about 260 houses on the market, which is moving to a really healthy market for our town.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, the Paradise Fire happened, and we had an influx of 20,000, people.
Yep.
And then from overnight, 260 to like 70 houses on the market in less than 30 days.
Wow.
And we really haven't recovered from that. That's really the biggest issue.
Yeah.
And it's no one's fault, right? We're just our region, our town, our county is like unique in the fact that we've had the Butte County fire.
Yeah.
There's been some fires in Reading, but the Paradise Fire, just
that was another level.
You had people coming overnight. There were probably two houses on the market that went away in 4 days, 5 days.
Yeah.
So now, ever since then, we've been trying to climb out of this deficit of inventory. And then COVID hits, and then boom, we're 2 years, okay, we're finally, it's coming back, and all of a sudden COVID hits, and then boom, we have another little, speed bump. So, those two things are unfortunate circumstances. So we're behind. I think we're probably 4 or 5 years away of getting to a healthy place because of what we had historically, right? Sacramento, a lot of these other towns haven't had those particular incidents, and I think that's...
And we used to be less than
Correct.
Sacramento. We used to be less, and now we're actually we're trending up.
Correct.
Compared to other areas, and probably because insurance money and all the stuff associated with that.
I think the influx of inflation is several dollars chasing fewer goods. So when the Paradise Fire happened, insurance money, PG money, all this money flooded the market, and it's like, let's go, right? And so those, and again, it's not a better, worse, right or wrong, but those are just the realities of what's transpired, So having the longevity of being in the market and seeing what was just hyperbolic, it was, the influx of, the Paradise.
Yeah.
And then it just, from there, we just been trying to claw out of just inventory.
Yeah, because I think all the jobs were in Chico. The houses were in Paradise. It was like a bedroom community for more or less. And people commuted. Yeah. And they lost all the houses. They had the jobs. They bought the house. And you lose, how many houses you think were lost in Paradise or the campfire? 15,000 or something like that?
And I want to say there was like 20,000. That there was 30,000 people in that town. I think like 20,000 migrated to Chico. Yeah. And then, Oroville got some, the whole deal, which is great. I mean, we have a lot of, seeing them kind of ingratiated into our community is awesome.
Yeah.
But just the economics 101 of supply and demand, when those houses are gone,
if you don't build more.
If you don't build more, you end up in this pinch, And so I used to track these metrics often, and really, we used to sell about 1,200 houses a month in Chico, and there's about 200, 300 houses on the market. And I remember distinctly the fall of, I think the fire was November 18th. November 5th, early November 2018.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit 2 years later, and then it's just been game over, and we've been clawing out of it. But shout out to, all the people who've been able to relocate and kind of rebuild their lives. Hearts go out to the new people in Cohasset or even locally who've lost their property.
Forest Ranch.
Obviously, it's not to the scale of what we've seen in other places, but, fire insurance will be another curveball as we go forward.
Yeah, crazy. All right, cool. So at the end of the day, you're thinking, okay, prices, rates are going down. The Fed's going to cut the rates September, probably November as well. But the November one's going to be very political.
No, I don't think it's going to be political. People are tying it to policy because the election is the day before.
Okay.
But I think there's 3 job reports that come out from here to then that will indicate what they do in November. I don't think it would be political. I think it would be data-based.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a lot of really good information. Tim, thanks for stopping by. We're going to end it there.
Yeah.
And we'll talk soon.
Awesome, man.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.